All right, everybody, good evening and welcome to Achieve Anything Now, the Master Key to Business and Personal Success, session number 2. This is, of course, April 12th, 2017. I want to thank everybody for being on the call tonight. We have a lot to do today, so welcome back. I'd love to start off with a couple quotes here. So tonight is all about don't just do something, sit there. And we'll explain what that is as we go through. And similarly speaking, you can have more of what you want with less energy, effort, and negative emotions and head stress. So remember, that's exactly what this course is all about. And how do we do that? Is by emotional release. So we're going to jump into that tonight. I'm going to warn you straight up front, there's a lot of content. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, be sure you have your pen and paper, and so that we can take some notes as we go along here. And of course, there'll be open Q&A at the end. So we're going to do a quick review. So remember the success equation from last week, right? You can have everything that you want in life if you have the right levels of motivation, plus concentration, which is long-term focus, plus commitment, which is long-term perseverance, and we let go of resistance. And there are, of course, 2 forms of resistance. We're going to go into that tonight on exactly what those 2 forms of resistance are. And we're going to focus on that, of course. This whole course revolves around letting go of resistance, because as we let go of resistance, we naturally increase the energy that we have with the motivation, concentration, and commitment. So if you remember last week, real quick, the money blueprint, right? It's really easy to give yourself a raise by just cutting your expenses, and then you naturally have more money easily and effortlessly. So the same thing, the same proportion is true in our psychology. As we let go of negative emotions and we let go of resistance, then everything in life gets easier, quicker, better, faster, quicker, better, faster with no additional output. So a couple Q&A from last session. People got in touch with me in between our sessions, and they said a couple quick things. Remember last week, the audio meditations were first just to practice breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And somebody said, hey, why do we breathe in through the nose instead of in through the mouth? Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure exactly what that is, except to say that when you breathe in through the nose, it really allows you to expand deep down into your diaphragm, where we're looking to breathe, and it really takes the air down into the bottom third of your lungs, where the majority of all the oxygen receptors are, versus in through the mouth is not as easy. So that's my explanation for that. Next question was, what happens if when I close my eyes, I can't see the light? Right? 2 reasons for that. Number 1 is if you're working to do the meditations and listening to the audio tapes in the middle of the day, instead of in a dark room, what may be happening very simply is that the light from the room, right, is actually just as bright as the light inside your head. So it might just be harder to see. And so you want to make sure that if that happens, go ahead and go into a darker room. The second one is you might need to activate the light. So remember the suggestion in the audio where you look up and to the right, and then up and to the left, and then straight up through the third eye where you tap. That should activate the light. And if that doesn't activate the light, when you close your eyes, lightly tap on your eyelids, and that will activate the light 100% for sure. Just make sure you do it nice and light. The last one is someone actually said, hey, I'm doing this when I go to bed, when I fall asleep. So why can't I see the light when I'm laying down in bed versus sitting up? Well, if you can't see the light other than the suggestions we just had in number 2, it could be the simple fact that you're not relaxed enough. So remember that relaxation comes from rapport with the unconscious mind happens with relaxation. So really make sure that you're breathing nice, deep down. Make sure you're fully relaxing. All the muscles are on your eyes, your temples, and your eyebrows, and that should drop you down into where you see the light. So a couple great questions from last week. So let's take a look at what resistance is, right? If we go back to the equation E equals mc squared minus 2r, what exactly is resistance? We talked about that some last time. Remember that resistance comes in 4 forms. It comes first in terms of mental thoughts, which are limiting decisions, like I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'll try, I don't know how. And those also extend to limiting decisions, can also be called limiting beliefs. So I can't, I'm not, I don't know how to do that. If this happens, then I'll do that, I'll try. But although, however, all of those language patterns are mental limitations. Of course, the second one is emotional, and these are the 4 primary emotions that we clear in this course. And they go in this order, as always. Please start to remember this. I'm going to say it over and over and over again. Are there negative emotions that we're going to clear up? Are anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and regret. So I know that sounds like 5, but actually fear and anxiety are the same. Fear is something from the past. Anxiety is a future fear. And guilt and regret are pretty much the same emotion, just a little bit of different word. The third form of resistance is actually something that's a physical, biochemical aspect of your body. Maybe you have insomnia, aches, pains, stomach bug, sickness, whatever that is. Physical reactions, right? Dis-ease in the body is natural. And then last but not least, of course, is spiritual, which is having that connection of something more than you. Or in the dichotomies of life, it's having safety or trust that everything is going to be okay. So tonight, at least intellectually, we're going to discover how to create that higher self connection with God, whatever you want to call that. And that's the spiritual piece. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So remember, the entire focus of this course is, of course, to learn these new cutting edge tools and strategies within your own minds. Nice typo, to clear these obstacles. So how are we going to do that? Well, first, we're going to take a look at the 2 forms of resistance that we have. And bear with me here, because I'm going to work to draw real quick here. So we have 2 forms of resistance in the unconscious mind. And so pretend that you're a ship, right? And maybe you have a coach, and you and I are here on the ship, right? And we're doing good, and we're sailing our ship, and we're having a good time. Now, we can do everything absolutely correct. And maybe we have this nice 10-knot wind that's coming along and filling our sails, right? It's a nice 10-knot wind. And with this 10-knot wind, let's just say hypothetically that we're able to go 5 miles an hour. Okay, I know that they don't do that on the water, but just metaphorically, let's just say we can go 5 miles an hour with this 10-knot wind. And we're coaching, we're doing everything great, right? We have good form, we have the tack right on the sails, everything's going good. But everybody has, hanging over the side of their boat in the unconscious mind, right? We have these anchors that are hanging over the side of the boat. This is the unconscious mind here underneath the water, right? And this is where all of our past memories live, right? The anger, the sadness, the fear, and the guilt, and past limiting decisions. And so we can be doing everything really great up here, but with this 10-knot wind, we're only going 5 miles an hour because this anchor here is dragging in the water underneath in our unconscious mind, right? It's underneath the surface here. This is the unconscious mind. And we just don't know that this stuff is holding us back. Well, what happens when we release this, right? So we come in and we take with our processes that we're going to do here, and we're going to cut this off, and we're just going to release this. The second form of resistance that you're going to have is all of a sudden, when you go ahead and you take and you cut the resistance of this unconscious mind, remember, without any additional energy or effort, this 10-knot wind, all of a sudden we're sailing even faster, and this 5 miles an hour turns into 15 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, we start saying things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. This is too good to be true. It'll never happen again because XYZ happened, and XYZ will never happen again next time. There's 2 forms of resistance that we're going to need to start to look at clearing up. It's going to be presented to you 2 ways. One is by things from the past, and then the second one is as you move forward, even quicker, better, faster, with more energy, you're not going to believe, oh my gosh, really? Can I really go this fast? Can it really be this easy? And you'll hear your unconscious mind bringing things up like, it's too good to be true. I can't believe it. This will never happen again. It won't last. And so we just want to be aware of that. And those are the two forms of resistance that we're going to experience as you do emotional clearing work. So if you have a question on that, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds here. Go ahead and write it down. But that's a really great metaphor to talk about the two levels of resistance. So initially, most of your resistance will be just clearing this stuff up from the past. And everything will flow smoother. And as you're sailing along over the seas of life, so to speak, things won't be so choppy, so up and down. And but then you'll have a hard time believing it because you'll be like looking for the next storm because that's what you've been used to. So that being said, this is a big part of what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, if you remember last time in session number 1, I just had that little microcosm of this picture right here, which was the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And we talked some, right, about the conscious mind that was the critical parent or the nurturing parent. And it has a phone line. It talks to the unconscious mind here. And what clogs up this phone line so the two don't connect well together are what we just said our main areas of resistance are anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and limiting decisions. Okay? Oop, come back, internet. So as we take a look at how the mind works, let's explore. I said this verbally last time, but let's explore each one of these. And what their jobs are. So the conscious mind, remember this is a house, so this is the basement, metaphorically this is first floor. The conscious mind lives kind of left brain as the nurturing or critical parent, and its primary direction is that it gives directions to the unconscious mind. It's kind of in charge. It says, hey, unconscious mind, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want to produce. I want that new BMW. I want this guy to do this. I need to prepare this report. It's living out here, looking in our real world, this world of our reality that we look in, right? The hard knocks of the desk and life and listening to me now. And it tells the unconscious mind what it wants to do. But it has a hard time with that because it only believes what it can see. So in goal setting, this conscious mind is programmed with the acronym called SMART goals, right? It believes what it can see. It believes in things that are simple and specific, measurable, meaningful, good for all areas of life, as if now, reasonable, realistic, and timed towards what we want. It lives in this left brain logic and reason world. And please remember, its primary direction here, or primary responsibility or prime directive is to give directions to the unconscious mind through this telephone cord. The unconscious mind, it is different. It's a child, right? We said the conscious mind was a critical or a nurturing parent. Well, the unconscious mind is a child. It's only 7 years old, and it's totally lost in the dark. So conscious mind is where you are right now. If you want to get in touch with your unconscious mind, everybody close your eyes for a second. Now you're in touch with the unconscious mind. And that unconscious mind is a little 7-year-old. It's in the basement where there are no windows, nothing except all the stored memories of the past and all the stored memories of the possibilities of the future. That's all that's there besides the light when you close your eyes. That's it. That's how you get in touch with the unconscious mind. That's how we say rapport equals relaxation. So we want to get these two to start to communicate and talk well together. So remember that the unconscious mind has some prime directives. It's 7 years old, so it never grew up. You can't hypnotize a child under 7 because they already are. The unconscious mind has a perfect blueprint of the body, right? It wants us to be whole and healed and complete. It also stores all of our memories, positive or negative. So all these negative memories of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions, resentments, or things that we need to forgive, it stores all of those negative memories, but it also stores all the happy ones like happiness, love, joy, passion, fun, achievement, enthusiasm, accomplishment. It stores all the good ones too. And the interesting thing is, Positive memories here keep us whole and healed and complete. Negative memories don't. So there's a conflict between these two, which is if the unconscious mind is supposed to store all of our negative memories, how does that keep us whole and healed and complete? What does it do? Because that's kind of a conundrum, right? If negative memories don't keep us whole and healed and complete, what do we do then, right? Well, that's where the unconscious mind has figured out something really cool. It will bring up your negative memories to the conscious mind to release, to let go of. But here's the thing. It needs the conscious mind's permission, because remember, the only thing that the conscious mind does is give direction to the unconscious mind. It needs permission from the parent. Every child asks for permission. Mommy, can I have this for dinner? Dad, can I have this for dessert? Mom, can I go do this? Dad, can you do this? Daddy, will you read me a book? We forget consciously, even as adults, that the unconscious mind is going to continue to communicate with us as a child, and it's going to continue to bring up all these negative memories for release, but it needs the conscious mind's permission. That is one of the foundational pieces of this whole course. And that's important to know, because what happens, tell me if you've been in this place before. You're driving down the street. It's a beautiful day, just like today here in Raleigh. It's sunny. It's bright. It's beautiful. You're driving along. You're happy. You're thinking about going home, kissing the wife and the kids, or the great day you had at work, whatever that is, or the dog or the cat, whoever's waiting there for you at home. You have this huge smile on my face, and then all of a sudden, that old boyfriend, that old girlfriend comes up, or, oh, that guy cuts you off and you get mad as heck, right? Or that negative thing comes right up in that moment. Why is the unconscious mind doing that? We don't ask that question. Why is it doing that? It's doing that because it's saying, hey, you're in a really good, happy space right now. So let's be even more whole and healed and complete. Here's this negative thing. I need permission to clear it up. But what does the conscious mind do? If it's the critical parent, it shoves that right back down his throat and says, no way, I don't want to deal with that. It's too painful. Forget it. I'm out of here. Knock it off. Quit that, whatever that is. And so it pushes the memory back down, tells the unconscious mind, store it. And but there's a problem with that, because when the unconscious mind stores those negative memories back down and they don't get released, this is what happens. There's a couple more. I didn't put them on here for ease of explanation, but one or two more of the prime directives of the unconscious mind is that it stores all of our memories and it assigns a meaning to new memories and experiences. Well, how does it do that? It takes a new experience out here through the conscious to the unconscious mind, and it says, oh, this is like that. This is like this. Oh, this memory is like happy. I'm going to put it with happy. But it also says, oh, this memory, I've had that guy cut me off in traffic before. That memory of anger, that's like anger. That's what I'm feeling now. So I'm going to stack that onto anger. And so by not releasing negative emotions, we actually perpetuate the problem over time, because we just keep stacking and linking up in a gestalt, which is this long line. We'll get into that in the advanced course. We stack up this gestalt of long experiences with different levels of emotional intensity, just like a long string of Christmas lights. And the next thing you know, somebody crosses us, cuts us off in traffic, and we're instantaneously furious. That's because we have so much of this gestalt stacked up that we haven't released from the unconscious mind, that's what it keeps giving us. So take a moment, and if you have any questions on that, please write it down, because this is a slide you're going to want to take a look at again, because it really outlines a huge piece of the foundation of this course of why do we release negative emotions. And most people just forget. As soon as you're about 7 years old, the conscious mind takes over and it starts to just shove the unconscious mind down. And we don't keep releasing. Nobody's taught us how. It's not your fault. Nobody's just taught us how to really release these negative emotions so we can be free of them. So go ahead and write down your questions real quick, and we'll get back here in 1 second. All right. So let's take a look at what this is right here, this little box here. This comes from some of the Silva mind learning methodology. The conscious mind lives in higher brainwave levels. So let's do a quick review. Brainwaves are your brainwaves are measured in what they call cycles per second. Now you've probably heard of this before. There are 4 different levels of brainwaves in terms of cycles per second. They go from a half to 39. So let's talk about these. Now I'm going to go from top to bottom here. So beta is probably where you are right now. If you stop, take a deep breath, look around, start having rapid eye movements, and you're here, there, here, there, here, there. The average person in their beta during the day at work or whatever is probably 23 to 25. Somebody with an ADD brain is maybe 26, 27. Someone who's having an epileptic seizure is mid-30s. And so there's an interesting thing that happens, which is when the brain waves, I'm gonna do the rest of these real quick. The alpha state and the theta state are kind of what they call the learning state. And this is where you get, if you take some of those nice deep breaths, it's where you are right before you close your eyes and you start to meditate. And as you start to meditate on the light, where you're not tired, you're not sleepy, but you really start to relax, you get in that nice state. This is how you used to be, or how you are when you step in an elevator. You're kind of like right here in the alpha state, probably like 9 to 12, because everybody goes in that light trance when they hit an elevator, or when you're walking down that really long hotel hallway, right? And they have that really psychedelic carpet that zones you out, right? That's the alpha state. Or the theta state, going into the alpha theta state, they call that the learning state right here around 8 or 9. That's where you get when you listen to some nice classical music and you start to read and you just kind of zone out, but you're reading and you're just truly having this door to the unconscious mind open and assimilating all the information. And then delta is where you fall asleep and you go into that deep delta REM sleep. And that's a sleep cycle. You go to beta, alpha, theta, delta, then back up to the theta, alpha state, and then back down. It's like an algorithm like this. It comes down, and then it comes up and down and up. And that's how your sleep cycles are. You go between the beta, down into alpha, theta, delta, then back up to theta, alpha, then back down to theta, delta, then back up to theta, alpha. And that's a sleep cycle. So an interesting thing happens. The more you relax your brain in your cycles per second, the more in touch you become with the unconscious mind, hence the arrow down. The higher your brain waves in cycles per second, the less rapport you have, the more you relax. Relax all the muscles around your eyes and your face and your jaw. The more all that negative self-talk, these emotions go away, and you have access with the unconscious mind. And I highlighted 6.8 cycles per second here because that's where the blue-black spot comes. That when you meditate on the light, the yellow-white light, when you hit 6.8 cycles per second, that's where that yellow-white light turns purple or blue-black, which is the space of truth. So we'll get into that later as well. But so anyway, so that's why I say relaxation equals rapport with your unconscious mind. So we made mention of that last time. All you need to do is remember the time that you were totally full of anxiety because you were going to be late, couldn't find your car keys. The unconscious mind, this shuts down because anxiety, and your unconscious mind can't even say, hey, your keys are in your hand, or hey, your sunglasses are on your head. It can't tell you that because the door to this unconscious mind closed down. It's like this phone line just gets disconnected. The higher your brain waves go, it gets more and more spotty, more and more garbled until when it gets up here into the 30s, it just cuts off. So that's how the brain works between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Now, an interesting thing happens. This is what we call a dichotomy between the conscious and the unconscious mind. So when we clear up anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions, and we drop from the conscious to the unconscious, going down in our cycles per second with the meditation, like hopefully you did this week, we kind of become one. the mind and the body become one. And then something really interesting happens, because you're probably saying, well, what's this here, right? Once the conscious and the unconscious mind are free of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions, guilt, and regret, this unconscious mind, we become one here, and then the unconscious mind becomes a conduit to what we call God, higher self. You've heard it called other things, the Akashic records, or the collective intellect of the universe, right? Collective consciousness, whatever you want to say, quantum physics, right? The quantum energy of the universe. When the conscious and the unconscious mind are whole and healed and complete together as one, the unconscious mind becomes a doorway to the higher self, or that's where the truth comes out at 6.8 cycles per second, the blue-black spot. And the higher self is called many different things: truth, love, oneness, universal consciousness. There are no dichotomies there. So that's where you just start to be, or that's also what you can't see here. Hang on one second. That's also what I refer to when I say that infinite source of love, healing energy coming in through the top of your head. We want to collapse these so that this infinite source of love, healing energy from the higher self can come in. And you've all had this. You've all had that moment where there's been a problem to solve, a problem to solve, a problem to solve. And then you ask a question. The conscious mind says, hey, what's the, maybe you're in the shower, so you're totally nice and relaxed. And your conscious mind gives direction. It all works and flows together. Look, it says, hey, what's the answer to this problem I've been trying to find? And then it lets go. It sends the unconscious mind that. You let go of everything because you drop down. You're so relaxed. All this disappears. And your unconscious mind then can do this search because all this is gone now. And the unconscious mind opens itself up and says, well, hey, we're whole and healed and complete now. So I want to give you what you want because I want to keep you happy. So I'm going to search everything that I have in my memory and my database for all the patterns of that. And I'm going to come up here to universal intelligence. I'm going to say, hey, what is that? And all of a sudden, just like that, the answer happens, or the answer comes to you, and you're like, oh, that was brilliant. Why didn't I think of that earlier? You didn't think of that earlier because that was the conscious mind that was thinking. You didn't have this doorway open. A little bit more of an expansion of that is you hear that from musicians or public speakers, and like, hey, I was guided by something more than me, right? Or I sat down at the piano and the song wrote itself in 20 minutes. When someone experiences those things, that means that this connection between all three of these are the same. You're going to experience that in the advanced course, and it's going to be a truly exciting thing to experience. So I know that's a lot of information, and please go ahead and write down any questions here is right before we move on. Okay, so write down any questions you have about any of these. The conscious mind, its prime directive, the unconscious mind and its prime directives, and the higher self connection here and how it works for our release of anger, sadness, fear, or guilt, limiting decisions, why that helps to clear this up. And we do that through creating the conscious mind to unconscious mind connection by relaxing into meditation, right? Because rapport equals relaxation, and how that works. All right? So go ahead and write down any questions you have. All right, so let's charge forward. Moving on. This is going to be your first exercise for next week. If you remember, last week there were actually 4 meditations that I released to you. The first one was just learning to breathe. The second one we added in with the breathing, the tapping on your third eye. And then the third one, we put it all together with the breathing, the tapping on the third eye, and then the meditation on the light, right? That was specifically to start to build this rapport, not doing any release yet, but just starting to build rapport with the unconscious mind and start to learn to meditate and drop our brainwaves and cycles per second. I included a bonus meditation, which was specifically to, if you needed it, it was called the inner child, to build this rapport with the inner child. one of the first releases that I'm going to ask you to do, in this, I've never heard this anywhere, I just made it up myself, but it's one of the great things that I did. One of the things that my mom did when my folks got divorced, she moved out, some things happened, I got into college and then got out on my own. One of the things that she did is she went through all of our old photo albums that as kids had, and she made each of us an actual photo album of all of our horrible, well, I used to think they were horrible. At the time, they were the horrible pictures that we had, in school pictures every year. And I don't know about you, but I can tell you that there's at least one, if not many, that used to, because I cleared it up, I used to look at it and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was me, or oh my gosh, they dressed me in what? That's so embarrassing, or whatever it was. So the first exercise I'd like for you to do to start to do some clearing work is to actually go back through any old photo albums that you have. If you have any of those old school pictures from elementary, junior high, baby pictures, high school, college pictures, anything where when you're looking at it, you kind of wince when you look at yourself and you're like, ooh, I don't look so good there in that picture. And what I'd like for you to do is kind of put those in order from youngest to oldest. And what I'd like for you to do is go back and for each picture, maybe do one a day or one every couple of days, whatever works for you. But go back and listen to the inner child meditation. And as you listen to the inner child meditation, as you start to picture your inner child and building that rapport with it, right? Letting it give you, putting its hand putting your hand on its head, and then building that, giving it a hug, saying that, I love you, you love me, building that rapport with it again. Go back and do that with each and every one of those negative, or those pictures that have a negative connotation from when you were young. And just take your time, do it as short or as much as you want. If you're an overachiever, I did mine like 2 or 3, 4 at once. Just go back or maybe even think outside the box and put all those inner children to come out in the meditation all at once, right? And one at a time, go through and hug each one and love on each one until all the negative aspects of that were linked up to that drop away, right? And you come back to a place of loving every one of those. What that's going to do is going to clear up a part of you, so to speak, that didn't like a part of you back then or what you represented back then. So that's my first coaching exercise to give you for next week. Listen, go back, find all the photos and pictures of an age group where you didn't like yourself, or pick one that just you didn't like that represents that. And then just go back and do the inner child meditation and tell your unconscious mind, say, hey, I'm substituting the picture of me when I was in 3rd grade. Hey, I'm creating the picture of me when I was in 4th grade. Bring that inner child out and go through the process with it, the guided meditation through that. Just notice how good it will feel to continue to do that. I changed my name from Jim to James somewhere right after college when I was in the Marshal Service. And one of my cousins called me Jimmy all the time. And I used to hate it because of the connotations I had from that when I was young. I cleared it up, and actually that's what I call my unconscious mind now, is Jimmy. So we're on great terms. We love each other. Everything's great. And he helps me out all the time with what I want and what I need. So it's important to go back and start to clear that up. So that's my first coaching challenge. So if you have any questions with that, go ahead and write that down real quick. And remember, you want to never listen to any of the audio tapes while driving, riding a bike, running in a busy area, or any other activity with movement where you might be putting yourself in harm's way when you kind of space out and zone out a little bit. So please remember that disclaimer. But go ahead and write your questions down. So here's our little unconscious mind again saying, hey, what the heck are we doing? Why the heck is it so important for us to release negative emotions? Now, I know I told you over here that the simple reason for us clearing up our negative emotions is just so that we can achieve things clearer, better, and faster. If that didn't persuade you, I'm going to persuade you now a different way by offering a new paradigm of thinking and of thought for you. This gentleman's model of the world psychiatrically opened up my mind like crazy. So I want to introduce you to Dr. David Hawkins. He's a medical doctor, has his PhD in psychology, and he worked extensively within the study of kinesiology and energy and levels of consciousness. And in my opinion, he developed an incredibly evolutionary model for psychological and spiritual growth. He has many, many different books. I've highlighted the two in red that I used primarily in building this course, but I've read all of them. Letting Go, Healing and Recovery. I've read all of these. Discovering the Presence of God. I've read all of them. But if you're going to start off to just have a book for reference or something that specifically you can relate immediately to the work in this Achieve Anything Now program, it's Power versus Force, or Transcending Levels of Consciousness. So I want to share with you his basic model here real quick. So I know there's a lot on here, but we're just going to take it really simple. And so he did this with tens and hundreds of thousands of experiments over his entire lifetime through his study here. And his belief is that you can't trust anything that your conscious mind tells you, because that's basically the ego. So he discovered that the only way you could really appreciate and trust what the unconscious mind was giving was when the conscious and the unconscious mind were collapsed, and you were in that meditative state. So he built this map of consciousness. This is in every one of his books. And I only want to focus, I know there's a whole lot of stuff in here you're probably reading and already not listening to my voice, but come back to me for a second. For the purposes of what we're doing right now, we're just going to look at level and log, okay? So this is a level of consciousness right here. This is his map of his levels of consciousness. In the corresponding energy, he calls it his log, but it's the corresponding level of energy through kinesiology, which is measuring energy of the body, that corresponds with each one of these energy levels or levels of consciousness. So what does this mean? There are several basic principles of what this means. Negative emotions all register below this level 200. That's what my red line is here that I put out on the page. So negative emotions that we're going to work to clear up: anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. You can see guilt and shame are pretty much the same. He had a few more distinctions than me. Shame resonates at an energy level 20. Guilt is, and it's the lowest of all energies. It weighs us down because it's so heavy. Guilt is 30. Apathy is 50. Guilt and regret, right? Or grief is more sadness, right? That's 75. Fear is at 100. Now you might say, well, desire is a good thing. Not necessarily, because desire means that you want something passionately. And so desire is actually a negative emotion. So is anger. Anger resonates at 150. And you might say, well, pride is a good thing. Well, not really, because pride is more of the ego in terms of doing it for significance reasons. So these are the basic emotions with the negative energy levels that are with them. So the basic premise, all you need to remember from this, is that negative emotions register below 200 on this. So we want to clear up negative emotions, because an interesting thing happens. Let's look over here on this side. As we release negative emotions, a person naturally will move to higher energy levels. Now, this is the thing, right? Remember when I said when we clear up all those things that are on the ship underneath the level in the unconscious mind, when we clear those things up, I used to believe that Tony Robbins said that you have to anchor in these new emotional states, but that's not true. If we just focus on releasing negative emotions more and more, we naturally move up and have more and more and more that's positive. So let's take a look at positive. What are the positive emotions that register above 200? Courage, right? To move outside of yourself. You see, all these are self-driven. They're individual, right? But when we have courage, all of a sudden we start to look at the world outside of ourselves. And what are we doing? What are we moving towards? Encouraged to do that, because that's where empowerment starts. And then there's neutrality, because we're happy with where we are and what's going on. We don't necessarily need to prove. We start to trust in the universe with what's happening, right? We let go of that fear of the future, the second resistance. So we just start to trust that things are really good. And then there's a willingness, which comes with optimism here, right? To move forward, acceptance of the world. And then reason has a place here, right? Being wise, doing things that are consciously meaningful. And then we move into love, joy, peace, and of course, enlightenment if we're lucky enough in this lifetime, right? So as we release negative emotions, according to Dr. Hawkins' model, we will naturally have more and more and more. We'll move into these higher levels as we do emotional release. Now, this is the thing. Why is that important? Because one of the universal laws of nature is that like attracts like. Now, imagine that. Anybody can have shame or experience shame if we do something that's shameful. If someone has a shameful body posture, if I put myself in that body posture, I'll experience the same thing. But what if that was the same thing with our thoughts? I believe that with each one of these levels come natural thought patterns, like limiting decisions, also that correspond with that. As we let these go and as we move up, guess what? We naturally start to take on the thought patterns, or we reframe life to move to this. When we let that go, then we naturally move to this. And so we naturally experience higher levels of thinking as well as feeling as we move up and up and up and up and up. What that does, without getting too deep into this, is it allows us start to be like in the book, The Untethered Soul or The Untethered Mind, right? He talks about you raise yourself to a certain level of consciousness where you start to just kind of become a spectator of life outside of you. You kind of almost become a little bit detached. That's what this does. As you move up in these levels, you don't have to take life so serious. And you can just start to see things for what they are. Basically, we build greater and greater levels of awareness as we expand and grow ourselves inside by release of negative emotions. And we naturally move up. Now, the other interesting thing is this, which is, guess what money is? Money is emotion. How can a shameful person have money? How can a guilty person have money and keep it? But a courageous person, a person who's just willing or has safety and trust, they pay their bills every month knowing that 10 times more is coming back, or acceptance, right? Reason, love, joy. People who have those things make a ton of money. So money is energy. So as we release these things more and more and more, we also naturally move into higher levels of energy. So if you and money. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write those down. Anything about this page? And remember that the whole purpose is, this is another reason why we want to do emotional release work, because everybody's looking for a purpose in life. I think the greatest purpose in life is to release all of your negative emotions so you continue your evolution to higher and higher levels of consciousness so that you can attract more and be more and have greater levels of change in the world. It's a natural progression. So if you're looking for purpose in life, this is it. So I love a couple simple quotes here. So good intentions flounder on the rocks of personal willpower, which is frequently used as a moral club that evokes further guilt and self-blame. Basically what this means is we clear this up. It takes less and less willpower to have more and more of what we want, easier and easier. So willpower creates our shadow self, and we want to stay away from that. So we want to clear up the negative emotions that allow us to move into higher levels of thinking and feeling so that we naturally achieve and attract more and more of what we want with less time, less energy, less work. I tripled my business in the last 3 years by doing this course. All I've done is raise my levels of energy. And as a result of that, my business has grown And I've attracted higher and higher and better level clients just simply by doing emotional release work. So we always clear things up: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. I need to speed up here. So how do we know what to clear and when? So let's talk a little bit about negative emotions here real quick. I've talked about this before. We clear things in order: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and limiting decisions. I'm going to say this over and over again. So let's take a look real quick about what these emotions mean and what they are. So anger, this is the energy level from the scale, but I want you to remember that anger is a stimulant and fear is a stimulant. So how you can start to raise your levels of awareness is just to notice, first and foremost, am I agitated? Do I want to reach out? Do I have some aggression? Am I starting to get nervous, vibrate, shake, anything like that? If you feel stimulated in any way, shape, or form, or a need to calm down, look and ask yourself, is it anger or is it fear that I'm experiencing in this moment? And how you determine if it's anger or if it's fear, if you're stimulated, right, is anger is an emotional indicator that someone's hurt, that you feel like someone has hurt or wronged you. And it's a protection mechanism. We don't want to believe or have experienced that feeling that someone's wronged me, or that I've been wronged somehow, some way, or that someone's hurt me. So we protect ourselves from that, but we protect ourselves by wanting to strike out. Fear or anxiety is a picture or a feeling of something that happened in the past or something in the future that was the way you didn't want it to be happening again. So it could be something that's brought up from the past that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen again, and you're projecting it in the future. Or it could just be a new picture or a new feeling from the future that you've created of something bad, right? The way you don't want it to be. So that's how, in part, we recognize anger and fear. Is keep in mind that they both are stimulants, so they both cause us to go somehow. Sadness and guilt, remember, those are towards the bottom there of the energy levels. They are both a depressant. So they are a suppressant. They have heavier feelings associated to them. They weigh us down more. So how do we, if we're feeling depressed, lethargic, melancholy, empty, kind of feeling hollow inside, how do we determine what the difference is between sadness and guilt? Sadness is trying to tell us that, hey, somewhere we have a perceived loss, void, or lack of something good to look forward to in the future. Okay? Guilt and regret are an emotional indicator that signals a belief or a standard that you believe to be true has been violated, or you haven't forgiven yourself from something in the past, right? You haven't learned everything you need to learn so that you can be more whole and healed and complete and have it be worth something that's going to make your life be better. So that's how you tell the distinctions between, if you're depressed or sad or feeling heavy, whatever it is, between sadness and guilt. So limiting decisions, you generally speaking won't feel any release when there's emotion because they're just decisions. That's more of just the left brain consciously releasing something. So go ahead and write down any quick questions you have there, but these are always the 4 primary emotions that we're going to clear up: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. Stimulant for anger and fear, depressant, sadness and guilt, and what they mean. All right, so we're going to charge forward here. So I want you to go back and review these for next week. But I want to talk about this. At the beginning of the meditations, we're going to start to clear up single events this year. This week. I'm going to release the audio meditations on anger, sadness, fear, guilt. I think I released limiting decisions this week too. I'm jumping ahead here. But go back and take a look at these. And at the beginning of each one of the releases, I go through these words again. So I'm like, hey, we're going to clear up some anger today. And so, anger can also be rage, resentment, revenge, outrage, indignation, fury, jealousy. I'm going to do this to kind of, quote, light it up for you, your unconscious mind, and go, oh, I was, really aggressive about this, or that person was really aggressive about that. That's a derivative of anger. Or, oh man, when you're saying, man, I hate that. Oh. The reason why I'm giving the words at the beginning of the audio meditations is so that it kind of lights up or gives the unconscious mind a little trigger of, hey, let's go ahead and release some of this here. Some of the sensations that come from all these different aspects of anger are grinding your teeth, like I said, quivering muscles, your pulse quickening, heart pounding, body tension, heat flushing throughout the body, and sweating. So you can go ahead and review this more in depth, but just remember, I'm going to be talking about this at the very beginning of the meditation to, quote unquote, light it up. And if you have those sensations, when these go away, you'll know that you've released it. Sadness, right, is also grief, loss, loneliness. If only this happened, then that would have happened. Regret. A lot of sadness is in the abdominal area. Pain, feeling helpless, hopeless, melancholy, depressed, empty inside, right? So these are the sensations you can actually have from experiencing sadness, achy chest, soreness in your throat and lungs, heaviness or tightness. Remember I said it's a depressant, so it weighs us down, heaviness. I have a breaking heart, right? A lack of energy, or the body feels cold, right? Lack of circulation, because it's a heaviness, right? So when you clear sadness, these are the things that we're going to be in the beginning of the meditation. And these are some of the sensations that you might notice leave for your conscious mind as a convincer that it's being let go of, or that it has been let go of. Next is fear and anxiety, right? So anxiety, panic, paralyzed, feeling frozen, having apprehension, uneasiness, heart palpitations, worry, threatened, timid, trapped. We're just going to let all that stuff go. So just let it go now. If you're experiencing any of that, just let it go. And the things that will release are things like shakiness in the limbs, heartbeat, dizziness. People who have extreme fear, right? You see that in war movies, right? A loosening of the bladder. Holding your breath, right, or hypersensitive sometimes to touch and to sound, right? You know that in a scary movie, watching a scary movie, somebody comes up behind you, taps you on your shoulder, and you jump through the ceiling, right? That's that hypersensitivity. So those are the things that you might experience as a release physically, the physical sensations, as we let go of fear and any of these derivative values of fear. And then we have one more after this, but guilt and regret. Remember, guilt and regret means that you violated a belief or a standard that you hold to be true. And it includes embarrassment, shame, self-punishment, self-invalidation, should, could, ought to, need to, suppression. And some of the sensations that you'll notice leaving when you release it are your upset stomach will go away, tightness in the chest, that will all loosen up, no more pain, you get your appetite back, you'll be able to sleep better. So that's why we want to let go of some of the guilt and regret that's there. And then last but not least are limiting beliefs or limiting decisions. And these are just a limiting decision or a belief is a seed that's planted in the unconscious mind that takes root, and then it grows, and we have belief systems that grow to support that limiting decision, like I can't. So we start to say, people are saying, oh, I have no self-confidence. I'm like, in what area specifically? Because I know a lot of areas where you have a lot of self-confidence. You breathe, right? You can listen very well. You can speak. You always remember the alphabet. You remember who your name is, what your name is, where you live, right? So you're very confident at many things. But we tend to build these generalizations or these limiting beliefs that I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't know how, I'm not this, I'm not that. And so we want to let those limiting decisions go. We just want to pluck it out by the roots, and then everything else, the beliefs go with it. So, but remember, they have no energy themselves, so you won't experience really anything physically when they're gone, other than maybe just an experience of just like that. Things are they're just gone. Nothing's there now. So real quick, I want to put a quick disclaimer in here as we start to build the rapport with the unconscious mind, right? Last week, we started with taking and building rapport with the unconscious mind through the meditation and the inner child. This week, we're going to start to relax, go into the meditations, and then ask the unconscious mind to just give us something. Give us something that's represented as anger that we can clear up today. Give us something that's sadness that we can clear up today. Give us something that's a fear from the past that we can clear up today. Give me something from guilt from the past that we can clear up today. And I just want you to start to notice in the audios, there are other suggestions. Okay, just let it go, right? And so just notice starting to release whatever your unconscious mind will bring up as an event. I want to have another very powerful disclaimer. There are a couple things to know here. If you're working to clear something up from the past and you've had a traumatic event like a rape or some serious other emotional issue, I would encourage you highly to not try to do that on your own. Always find someone who's trained in Line Therapy or time empowerment. Same thing, just different companies. Someone who has a master practitioner training certification in Line Therapy or time empowerment techniques, and make sure it's within the scope of their practice to help you clear it up. So please never try to do anything that's a trauma or a serious emotional event on your own without help from someone who has some training and experience to do that. Okay? If something comes up when you're clearing it and you have a hard time letting it go or you can't, call me immediately and we'll set up a time to work together. Okay? And I mean that free of charge because I want you to stay safe and be in a great space and release what you need to release. The second notice that I have is this. When you clear up anger, we always clear sadness up afterwards. So hear me loud and clear. You can clear up sadness on its own. You can clear up fear and anxiety on their own. You can clear up guilt and regret on their own. You can clear up limiting decisions on their own. But when you clear up the anger, and listen to the clearing anger audio meditation, you always have to immediately, right after that, pop in sadness and release sadness. The reason for that is this. Anger is a protection mechanism that you've put around yourself because you don't want to be hurt or have, basically it's a non-acceptance of something that's happening either internally or externally. Once you accept that, because acceptance of the situation is what releases anger and resentment, because you accept that the situation is what it is, it's very easy to drop into sadness because as you accept it, everything changes in relationship to that. So let's say hypothetically someone lost their spouse, knock on wood, right? Clear this away as soon as we're done, unconscious minds. At first they might be angry because they don't want to accept it, but as soon as they accept it, then all those future things that they had in their future that kept them alive and vibrant and happy, and the future anniversaries and Christmases and holidays and all those wonderful things together, that drops out of the timeline, and that creates sadness. So we want to clear up the sadness as well, so you don't stay in that depressed, melancholy state. Right, that lower energy level. So, because remember, anger is up at 150, sadness is down at I think 50 or 75. So you're going to drop in an energy level there when you clear up anger and down into sadness. So always clear up anger and sadness together. Okay, so that's my big caveat there. So, when should you clear emotions? When should you pull out these audios and listen to them? Anytime you have a moment of awareness and you realize that you're feeling the emotion and are associated to it, great. Just find a calm spot, identify the emotion, pull out that audio and listen to it and release it and let it go. The second time you may find that you want to clear up an emotion is if you find yourself judging someone else, right? Like, gosh, they're so mad, they're so angry. They're just representing something that you have some anger to clear up about. So Just replace the they, them, he, she, John, or Susie. They're so angry because of this. Just replace it with, you know what? Well, somewhere inside, I'm so angry because I know how that feels, or whatever that is. That's where you want to have that self-awareness and clear that up. Or the last one is just ask your unconscious mind, even when you're happy or in a good mood, just put in the tape and say, hey, clear it up. Let's just, dear unconscious mind, you know what you need to clear up in order for us to be more whole and healed and complete. So let's just go ahead and release anything that's related to anger now. And just let it give you what it wants to clear up, and you can do it in a proactive way. So those are 3 different ways that you can trigger when you would choose to listen to the audios for this week. When you find yourself associated to that feeling, when you're not necessarily associated to it, but you find yourself judging someone else, because that'll give you some insight into what you need to clear up for you. Or when you're feeling good, just for the heck of it, and you have 20 minutes or a half hour, all these meditations are 8 to 9 minutes, so you should be able to clear it up quick and easy. Except when you do anger, then you have to do both together, which means you got to spend 20 minutes or 18 minutes, right, doing them together. But you might just say, hey, I'm just going to try this out. Let's just do some emotional clearing. So, hey, unconscious mind, just pull up any anger that you have and let's just let it go, right, and do it proactively. So those are the 3 ways to clear emotions. I'm going to skip in the interest of time. I'm going to skip this 5-step clearing process, and we'll go over that next week. Some of the weekly exercises, go ahead and review this session too if you need. Listen to the inner child meditation with the exercise I gave you there. Start to build awareness of your internal feelings and listen to the meditations of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. And that'll be the exercises for the week. So just remember the map of consciousness. We want to clear things up so that we can move to higher and higher levels of energy and experience more and more, because like attracts like. And the higher energy, the more money we make, right? And so we just covered this. So next week, for preview of session number 3, we're going to do that 5-step clearing process that I just talked about. We're going to put all this together in the 5 simple steps for the CEO morning routine. We're going to go through a new process to help build awareness to negative emotions called Keys to an Achievable Outcome for Goal Achievement. So this week, we're just asking you to clear up those negative emotions easily and effortlessly for whatever the unconscious mind gives you. Next week, we're going to have you start to release them in regards to a specific goal. And then some suggestions for monthly, weekly, and daily use of what we've learned so far. So once again, please send all your Q&A to me. I'll have all the materials uploaded into Dropbox tomorrow. And I know we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we're going to jump, of course, into some Q&A, and I'll stay on the phone as long as we need.